Welcome to Growing Startups, where we talk to growth leaders and marketing professionals about how to drive sustainable growth from the ground up. I'm your host, Evelyn Cools, and I lead marketing for tech startups. I'm excited to share these candid conversations about marketing, culture, collaboration, and everything else that makes startups grow. I'm joined today by one of my favorite marketers. Her name is Branca Ballot, and she's the former VP of Marketing at Glide and GoDaddy, but currently building her own startup as a first-time founder in stealth. And I feel very honored because I've been able to be kind of behind the scenes and help test it. So, Branca, I'll let you share however much you want about it. But first off, just you have a fan over here. It's so great to talk to you today. So maybe we can start off by just getting a quick overview from you on your background and then what you're currently working on, however much you want to share.
Of course, thank you. So I am a mechanical engineer by background, not a traditional background for a marketer. And I started my career in consulting and private equity, so still not in marketing. And so about 10 years ago, I switched over to tech. I lived in San Francisco and then got my first tech job. And that was in sales strategy and operations at a startup called Zenefits that was growing really, really fast. And that was one of my favorite jobs. I had a lot of jobs that I really liked, but that was one job that I really, really liked. And halfway through my tenure at Zenefits, there were a lot of changes and I moved over to marketing to run growth marketing at the time. And that was my first introduction to marketing. And it was like, I'm a numbers person, I'm a systems person. And so it was really fun to kind of like think about that from that angle. So learned a ton there. And then I ended up going to GoDaddy where I spent like a really good chunk of my career. And there I built like a whole sub brand from scratch. So that was awesome. And then for the past 3 years, I've been at Glide, a no-code app builder. Really standing up the marketing and go-to-market from the ground up there. Very good experience as well. And like, I love building teams and it's been like a really big passion of mine. A few months ago, I decided to leave. I was like, you know what, maybe I'm searching like something slightly different. I didn't leave to start my own company or anything. It was more to like take a little break and figure out what was next. And then a few months ago, I had a business idea that I've been chasing. And then I've been talking to a lot of people in my activity, including you. And it's been like a really fun journey. It's like a crazy journey to be like, you have an idea and you want to solve a problem, but you know kind of how you want to do it, but then the path is very different than what you kind of like envision. So I've just been really enjoying that path and it's been really fun.
This podcast is brought to you by Evelyn Cools Marketing. If you're an early stage B2B tech founder who wants marketing to actually work, you're in the right place. As a fractional head of marketing and growth advisor, I help early stage B2B startups take marketing from 0 to 1 by building the foundations, testing different channels, and scaling what works. I'm currently offering a free strategy call where I do an audit of what you've tried with marketing so far and share practical advice that I believe will make the biggest impact on your growth engine. Visit evelyncools.com to book your free strategy call today. Now back to the episode. Yeah, it's been really cool for anyone who doesn't follow Branca. Like, to follow you on LinkedIn is so awesome because you're really one of those people that builds in public. And I love that because I think it's so interesting to see like behind the hood or underneath the hood of how startups get built from that like first year. You're just a team of one at this point, right? So yeah, that's been awesome. Is there anything that's been like surprising to you as a first time founder that you were like, oh, I didn't think that this was going to be how it is, you know?
Oh, yeah. I honestly, it's like the emotional roller coaster is the toughest thing. It's really the toughest thing of all of them because, you know, before I started and kind of like I didn't start with like, hey, I'm starting a business. I was like, I'm starting to explore this idea. And then it kept like going and going if I got confirmation. But especially because I'm doing it alone and I don't have anyone to share every day and to kind of like bounce back ideas besides ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. It's just this emotional roller coaster of like knowing what to do next. What is the most important that you need to do? What is the most important thing that you need to fix? Or what is the goal that you need to be driving towards this month or this week? Because you really have no one to tell you. Especially when you're doing this alone, like you have no one. So that is like a really tough mind game that you play on yourself. And so I honestly thought it was tough, before doing this. And now I'm like, am I tough enough? Because it's a very tough situation to be in. So yeah, that's been the surprise for me.
That is difficult because you meet a lot of founders who have co-founders. And I can imagine, I mean, it can already get lonely or difficult when you're working remote or when you're working on a small team, even. Like I felt that way as like the only marketer on a lot of the startups that I was part of. But to be really the only person working on the company, that's something else.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And I can imagine like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini become your best friends at that point.
They are. And sometimes I go to one and it's like, okay, this one is telling me that this is amazing, but I'm like, I don't think it's amazing. Then I go to the other, I'm like, what do you think? And this is terrible. And then sometimes I'm like, I really wish someone, maybe that's going to be how my startup is going to evolve. I think there should be like a face off where you put like ChatGPT, Gemini, and like Claude all to like debate something. Because sometimes when you're kind of like doing something alone, you ask for their opinions. Obviously, like you're not going to rely on what they say, but it's just like a very interesting experience.
That I would so sign up for that if you ever wanted to like battle out the different AI platforms.
Yeah.
I would totally watch it. Before we get into all the awesome topics that we have for today, I do like to ask people, and I think this is incredibly relevant, especially for you as a first-time founder. What's something that you do on a routine basis that kind of helps ground you or, you know, give you that perspective again of like, okay, I can take on the day?
So I try to exercise pretty much every weekday, and I try to do that in the morning before everything happens. And I don't do it for the fitness. I do it for the brain. I do it for like, hey, I'm doing something to kind of like take care of my body, but to like really make sure that I'm doing something else. I'm like very obsessive with work, so it's very easy for me to just sit down and work all day long. So that's something very useful. The other thing that I do, and I started doing this a couple years ago, and it's awesome because I've been working from home as well for many, many years now, even before COVID. I tried after lunch, I actually lunch really quick. It's bad, but I try to go for like a 10-minute walk, 10 to 15-minute walk outside every day. And that to me is an incredible way of like resetting. Sometimes, like, you know, if I'm frustrated from the morning or if I'm getting tired or something, that walk usually gives me like another at least like 4 hours of energy. And, you know, doing it in the sun and, you know, fresh air is very, very helpful. And then one final thing. So you asked me for one, I'm giving you three. One thing that I started doing as I started this journey alone is I created this little ritual for the morning and for the end of the day of like, what are my priorities? And having those rituals have been really helpful to keep me grounded, more so than just like a plain to-do list.
That's awesome. And I love anything in threes just makes sense. I think as marketers, we always default to
Yes.
giving things in threes. So this is on brand. Awesome. You mentioned earlier that you have built a lot of go-to-market teams, and I think that's the place that I'd love to start this conversation is how do you build a strong GTM team from the ground up? I don't know if you're usually the first person going into these companies as the marketer. That's what I usually do. So I'd love to hear a little bit about like how you usually get started and then how you like to build out your team.
I haven't been the first marketer in startups, but I usually tend to come at a very early stage when someone is like, hey, we want to build something from this. And it's usually like a very small team or a very small footprint. And they're like, we're ready to kind of like start thinking about how do we grow that. At Zenefits, I joined as an individual contributor, ended up building a small team, and then took over another team, and then grew that team. At GoDaddy, I joined as an individual contributor and then grew that into a very large team. And at Glide, it was the same. It was like I joined very few people. I think there were 4 in marketing, and then we grew up to 12 by the time I left. And so that's usually where I come is at that level of like, okay, what do we need to do to build a team? The way I usually do this is I first think about like, okay, what is the business strategy and what is going to be my go-to-market and marketing strategy to make sure that you do that. So instead of just coming and being like, hey, I need a content marketer, I need a performance marketer, I need an email marketer. It's like, what are going to be the levers that we want to pull for this stage of the business, for, you know, the go-to-market thing that we're doing, and then figure out like how to hire that. I'll just give a couple examples. So Glide, when I joined, was very much like PLG, right? With a little bit of sales assist, but very much PLG. we were not doing ABM, right? That's not what we were doing. And we were not doing a ton of like paid advertising. So like a performance marketer didn't make a ton of sense. And we had a lot of community engagement and we really focused on SEO. And so that dictates then the type of person that you're going to do. There are many roles, I think, in marketing. I think obviously the first marketer is super important. And then there are some other roles that are very critical in marketing, like the growth marketer and the product marketer. They're very, very critical. They're critical pillars like of your marketing team. And growth marketers, they come in all shapes and form. I know because I have hired many of those. And you can have a growth marketer who's like amazing at ads. You can have growth marketer who's really thinking about funnels and funnel optimization. And you can have a growth marketer who excels in like organic channels. And, sometimes you'll have a unicorn that excels at all of these, but it's very, very, very rare that's the case. And so usually what you want to do is think about, okay, you as a head of marketing, what are the places where you want to spend more of your effort on? And then think about that in terms of the person that you're going to hire. So I am very much against like very plain job descriptions. So like, this is what all growth marketers are going to do. This is what product marketers are always going to do, because I find that like, that's where you just end up hiring the wrong person for the role that you need. And that happens very often, unfortunately, in many, many companies.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen that a lot. And outside of, figuring out what part of marketing or what specialization they have, are there any more soft skills or personality types that you like to hire for these early teams?
Absolutely. I think for me, one of the things that I really believe people can learn pretty much anything these days. I have always believed that. I think now even more so. What I really try to do is try to figure out, like, am I hiring someone that has grit and is going to figure out on their own and is going to, when they make mistakes, which is obviously going to happen, are they going to like catch and learn and then just keep iterating even without me catching it? So that's usually what I try to hire for. And then, my teams end up having a lot of fun because we end up having a bunch of these people that are like super high agency. They end up working really well together. It just ends up being really fun. And like, I always tell people, like, I'm not a micromanager unless you're doing a bad job. So it just creates this team of like really adults and people that know and care about what they're doing. And like, if you make a mistake, I'm never going to go and be like, hey, you did this. Like, the person is often going to come and be like, hey, we did this campaign or we did this email or whatever we did and it didn't work. This is what I learned. This is how I'm pivoting. I'm like, great. That's all I can ask for. Those personality traits, I think they're very, very important for someone to work well with me and on my teams.
Yeah, it's a very exciting place to be, those early stage teams where you're all just super high energy, everyone's figuring stuff out on their own. I feel like you almost need like founder type people
Yeah.
sometimes on the marketing team because they do have that sense of agency and like owning what they're doing as well.
Yep.
Yeah, we're definitely aligned there. And that is something that I definitely hope in the future as well I can experience, is working on a slightly bigger team, not just being that like solo marketer, because it sounds like so much fun.
It is fun. Yeah.
Well, something else that we align on very well, I think, is paid versus not paid channels, especially in the early stages of startup marketing when you're
Yeah.
still figuring out, what channels work for us, what do we need to invest in. And I usually never bring in paid as like a first thing before we've tested other channels or tried to grow organically. And I think you feel about it in a similar way, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts on paid marketing versus other types of marketing in the beginning?
Yeah. I really think you should delay paid until you're like very clear on, do you have product market fit? Do you have messaging that is really resonating with people? Are you getting like word of mouth and are you getting like really happy customers? How's your activation looking? How's your retention looking? And then have you put the right, bets in some of the more organic channels, whether it's SEO, which sometimes it's early stage, or whether it's like just organic social media, like the founder talking about it, or you partner with your community if that's relevant for your product. The reason being is there's a ton of stuff that you need to figure out at this earlier stage until you get this very clear product market fit and figure out what your marketing motion should be. That paid will just be effort that you put and you're not necessarily getting the learning that you need. And so I'm very much for like delaying paid until like you get like very clear on like that traction. Very, very clear. And so we have actually tested a lot of paid at different times at Glide. We would get absolute positive results. But then when we would compare with that amount of money or that amount of time spent on something else, we ended up always going back and being like, the other thing is actually more, it gives us a better return. And so we would then go and be like, yeah, okay, but so then let's not do pay now. I do think though, there are some times where like you have super clear product market fit and like now it's just about like velocity. Like you just really need to get like, what the audience is, everything, then you need to go and do that. So, but I would wait. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's more of something you layer on top of things that are
Yes.
already working once your messaging is tight.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've actually been that's completely resonates as well because I've been surprised at some of the channels or types of content, for example, that are very cheap to produce in a way or don't require a lot of, we're not like going out and getting an agency to help us with this, or we're not hiring paid ads person. So the investment is actually super low. It's just time spent by the
Yes.
team. And so that's always exciting when you find those things. I think I've been surprised at how well webinars have performed. I feel like it's something that's like a
Yes.
tried and true channel,
Yeah.
as well as like partner marketing, I think is fantastic, is when you like build those partner relationships. And I'm curious, from your time at, the previous companies that you've been at, are there any channels that you think are underrated or things that you thought worked really well that other people might get some inspiration from?
Yeah. Well, many. Okay. I'm going to try to talk about 3 channels. Well, it's
Nice.
hard because I probably have 3 to 5 that I really like. But okay, let's talk about that. So one is, let's talk about SEO and however the kids are calling LLM, AEO, GEO these days. I don't know if there's a verdict already on that. I'm glad we invested a ton in SEO. And then what we saw when LLM started coming up and we started seeing like, we tracked like both all of the right UTMs, but we also track like self-reported source of traffic. I'm always for triangulating those things. There's no attribution whatsoever that is perfect that I've ever found. And so that is something that I would really focus on, as like something that you do that for the mid to long term as a brand. Like if you think you're going to stick around, I would really focus on that because there's just so much return in focusing on those things early. So that's something that I always like to invest in. And what we saw is like the stuff that we were investing in SEO was helping for LLMs. And then there was some specific things that we were trying around LLMs, but it's not that like the SEO stuff was totally lost. Obviously, there were some things that were different, but I think it's like part of like a similar bucket that I really like. The other thing that I really like is you talked a little bit about partner marketing. And I think about partner marketing, and there's partner marketing and community marketing. I like to call it like ecosystem marketing, which is basically like all the people, whether your company lends itself to like a lot of integrations or whether, you have like, for example, at Glide, we have this massive like expert audience who are the people using Glide to serve their clients. And so to the extent you can tap into those audiences, whether your partners or whether it's like your community and your service providers that use your thing, I think you can go a really long way. I think that Clay does probably the best job of all jobs of like really, like they started building for that community and then they really like empower that community and then they elevate them. So I think they do a fantastic job of doing that. So I always like ecosystem marketing. I would not discount organic social media. Founder presence, employee presence, customer presence is just so, so, so powerful. So powerful. And it honestly, at every stage, you can be doing sales-led marketing. That's helpful. If you can be doing B2C, that's helpful. You can be doing B2 small business. That's helpful. So I really think that like everyone should be thinking about that. And I think everyone should give like Founder Brand, the book from Dave Gerhardt, to their founders. It should be like a gift they bring to a new company, because having been a marketer like who has tried to do this with many founders before, it's really hard. I honestly, to be, if I actually go get a job somewhere else, I'm basically going to send the CEO this book. And if they agree with it, I will join the company. If they refuse it, I probably won't join the company. Because I'm like, you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And then the final thing that I'll say, which is not usually a channel that I use a lot for acquisition, I know some people do, is email marketing. I always have this say where I say, if you think email is dead, you're dead to me. Because email is such a powerful channel. Such a powerful channel. I haven't done a Glide a lot of like buying a lot of lists, cleaning them up, and then just trying to go to do that. But from a activation, retention, engagement, promotion of webinars, it's just so powerful. So people, do not sleep on email. Do not.
I love email marketing. You're preaching to the choir here. Okay, now you made me think about that book. Maybe I need to start sending that to my clients, but when I
You
start
need
working
to.
with them.
You need to. Yes.
It'll do some of the work for me because I think a lot of it is mental, right? With like
Yes.
how do you make yourself a brand in a sense?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great segue to the other side of this, which is obviously we talked a lot about you as a marketer, but you're also a first time founder. And something you obviously tell all the founders you work with is to put yourself out there online, to post consistently. And you've been doing such a great job at that. Again, like from the beginning of this conversation, it's how I found you, it's how we got connected. So it clearly is, doing a lot for you. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about what your journey has been like with that and kind of becoming a founder facing person on LinkedIn.
It is honestly what I have a lot of respect now for founders is the fact that, like, when you are trying to build something, there are some things that they feel like existential. And then your social media presence doesn't feel like as existential to you because they're like, whoa, if I don't have a product that, is working for people or solving a really big problem for people, then why does it matter to be posting on social media, right? And the thing that is really interesting is I am finding myself with those same thoughts, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, but I still don't have this product like dialed the way I want to. There's all these things that I want to do. And then sometimes, honestly, what I find really interesting is like when your confidence as a builder actually dips, your willingness and to talk about it is just lower. Right. And so that's the thing. You're like, it becomes much harder to be talking about it when you're not like on your high. And, I've been on this journey for a few months now. And then I have my highs where I'm like, I want to share with the world. And then I have my lows and I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about today? Like, people are going to care about this. And so it is a very tough journey. And I think I have a lot more respect for founders for like why they're not doing it on social media. It's not just because they don't care. They think it's silly. It's like there's a lot of it is in your mind and like how you think you are. And what I find is I don't have a great recipe for my social media presence. I actually think I could be doing a much better job. But I find it like if you overthink your presence too much, then you just get robotic or you just get like, I think you have to do something that is true to yourself and then just something that you don't overthink it. I think if you're like spending 2 hours to write a LinkedIn post, it's not the right call. It should not be a 2-hour thing, right? It should be like a 5-minute thing, a 10-minute thing, maybe a 30-minute thing if it's like a super researched post or something, if that's your style. But like that's what it's supposed to be. And so it is a really big challenge. But I still recommend people to do it. And I really believe in like discipline. It's like if you say you're going to do it like once a week, it's much easier to skip than if you say I'm going to do it 3 times a week. Whatever you do more frequently becomes easier to do. And so I am a really big, whenever I want to give myself a kick on social media, I commit to like doing it every weekday for a month. And then it puts me in shape.
I've seen that. You post so consistently, it blows my mind. And everything is like high quality. I love reading everything that you put out. So
Thank
I'm
you.
curious, you said you don't really have a recipe. I'm sure you have like writer's block moments of like, okay, what am I going to talk about now? What are kind of I've heard of people talking about posting on LinkedIn as you have different pillars. Maybe you have like business, expertise, and personal life, and you try to post a little bit about everything. Are there specific themes or things that you like to focus on? Or is it kind of whatever you feel like is happening in your own life?
I'm more of that, what I feel like. The stuff that I tend to do, the stuff that is going in my life right now, job stuff, work stuff, that like a challenge that I'm facing or something that I just did that I got excited or I learned. So that's one, I don't have pillars written anywhere, but like that's usually one thing that I do. The other thing sometimes that I do is when I'm having a conversation like this one or with someone that is not a podcast, someone is asking me for advice or something comes across in the meeting where I just talk about like an experience that I have lived and something that I have learned. And then it inspires me to go and write a LinkedIn post of something I learned like many years ago. So for example, a couple weeks ago, I wrote a post about the fact that before I worked at startups, I had a meeting with a VC talent partner. His advice to me was like, you're not going to get a job at a startup. Go work at Google or LinkedIn for a couple years and then you'll maybe get a job at a startup. And
Wow.
so I remember that. And then I cold called actually my way into tech and I got a job at a startup. And I then wrote a whole LinkedIn post about it because I had mentioned it to someone. And then that post got a lot of excitement. And then I do post stuff about like my life as well and or things that I'm learning or things like especially as a mom, who works like really hard and has always had a really intense career. I feel like there's a lot that we don't talk about openly. We just like brush it to the side. It's basically this invisible side of your life where you're just like, oh, work really, really, really hard, and work like 996 and just focus on this. And then you have like a kid, a family, or many kids. And you're like, is that not part of the equation? Like, how are people doing that? And I always like to share with people that like I don't do it all because I think there's enough of people doing beautiful things everywhere. And I'm just like, I'm just trying to survive every day. And so I think it's important for people to see that.
Absolutely. I think that's the kind of toxic part of LinkedIn sometimes is like any social media, seeing all those highlight reels. And you're right, like the family side of things just always gets pushed to the background. And as women, I think we hide it on purpose because we don't know, the impact that it might have on career opportunities or how our current employer sees us. So that's one of the first things I noticed about you. And obviously myself being a new mom, I was just like, oh, people are talking about the reality of this. Like I needed that. I need to hear that. Maybe one last note to end on. Is there any advice you have for founders who are listening right now who want to show up more consistently online and aren't sure where to start, or maybe they're feeling some fear of putting themselves out there or imposter syndrome? Anything you can give them right now to kind of like boost their inspiration?
So I think that like if you went all the way to start a company is because you have like an idea or you see a problem or you see a person or a type of group of people that have a problem or you have a point of view. You might not be confident on that today, but you have something, right? And so I think that like talking about that is the best start, right? To start talking about that. And so that's always what I suggest people to do. And then figure out like, you know already who you are. Are you the more intellectual type of person? Are you the funny type of person? Are you are you witty? Are you, figure that out and like start experimenting. And then once you kind of like know that, I think it's very hard to start. Like it's very hard to just go from zero to anything. Then the kick that I like to give myself is just commit to something very uncomfortable for a period of time. For me, it's usually 1 month of posting every weekday. It does it for me because it gets me out of like, okay. And then what I usually do is I block time on my calendar. It has to be limited. I do something that I do not recommend anyone doing. I write all my posts on LinkedIn directly, and then I don't use any other tool to like edit because if I read my posts again, I will not publish because I'll be in my brain. And so that works for me. I'm not saying that works for everyone. And then you just go. And then you just do it. I really think that like it is a just do it type of situation. And if for some reason you're like, I cannot get myself to do it. I cannot get to do video. I cannot get to do audio. Like I cannot get to do text. I cannot consider getting yourself like help from your marketer or help from someone outside of your company. Because I still think the end game is worth it, but it will be better if it comes from you.
I think so too. Because founders, and I've done this before too, where I think marketers are great at like figuring out the founder's voice and then writing as if they're them, or even with like email marketing, like you said, sometimes you want things to come from the founder. And so marketers are usually very good at figuring that out for you, but it's always better when it's completely from your own mind
It
and your
is.
own way of talking.
It is. And I will say the final tip for founders is I have found some founders to be better on video. They love doing demos of the product or they just like to go on a walk and do a video. Honestly, don't limit yourself to writing. If you are for example, I don't do videos because I feel like I look terrible on videos. Like, but some people they're like, I just find video easier because I then just go and talk to video. Honestly, it does not matter. As long as you get out of your head, that's what matters.
Well, I think you look great on video, so maybe that's something you can get out of your head about.
Good.
It's true. People love to see other people's personality, and there's just so much more you can get across with video. So
Yeah.
I think it's great that we're doing this on video as well.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I loved this conversation so much. The last thing that I always like to ask people is, what is something that you're excited about both in your professional and your personal life at the moment?
I think for me, it's kind of like converging. It's this like business that I'm working on because it has actually a big component. It's solving for something from my personal life, from like all aspects of my life. That is the thing that I'm most excited about, is just like seeing that coming to fruition, going through the process, having all of the ups and downs. That has been like incredible. And I think I've learned so much in just a few months, way more than I have in like years of my career. So I'm really loving that. And on the personal side, one thing that has been really touching for me is like the support that I've been getting from my partner and my kids to do this, in terms of like, I've been working a lot and they're like being so respectful of that. So this Thanksgiving, for example, I had promised that I wasn't going to work, and I worked every single day, many hours a day. And like, they're not complaining. They're just like being supportive because they want to see me see this through. I think over Christmas, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to try.
You say that now.
Yeah. That's what I said before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but I do think there is something about, and as a mom, I think it's easy to feel guilty about time spent working and not with your kids. But I think there's also something really cool about your kids being able to see you build out your own dream, and that is also very exciting for them to watch. So I'm sure that there's a lot of that going on too.
There is, yes.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, thank you so much, Branca. One last thing. Where can people connect with you if they want to get in touch or follow all your amazing content you're putting out?
Oh, LinkedIn. It's my channel.
Awesome. Yeah, love LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I loved this conversation so much. We will see you all in the next one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Growing Startups. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to give us a rating so more people can find the show. So happy you're here, and see you in the next one.